have a wonderful treat for you today. Welcome to the podcast of Life with Jen, because life is better with you in it. And part of this podcast is going to be bringing on some people who make their world a better place, are business owners, are impacting their community in a positive way, and just exposing you to different people all over the country. And so we have a special treat because this is my stepdad, Steve, and Steve has done a multitude of things in his career, and he's been a couple different things at once. And so, Steve, tell us a little bit about you and what you do for a living.
Born and raised in this general area.
Okay. What's the general area? Where are we?
We're in Will County, Illinois,
All right.
by little town of Manhattan, out in the country.
Mm-hmm.
Started in business at age 21, and still have that same business going on right now, and done a few other things, and now I've ventured into farming also. So just kind of like making money, and I just love working. I've worked since I was 5 years old.
Okay. Okay. And so you grew up in this Will County area of Illinois, and you started working from 21. You have a funny story, and I want to share with all the listeners, because we get this question, right? What do you want to be when you grow up? Even now at my age, I'm asking this question, what do I want to be when I grow up? What do I want to do for a living? And so tell me what you wanted to be when you grew up.
Well, when I was a junior in high school, my history teacher, Mr. Rodriguez, asked everybody in the class what they wanted to be. And I right away told I was working for a concrete contractor. I was on a work program in the high school, and I had already, my whole life, I wanted to be in business. My dad ran a feedlot down in Pontiac, and we fed like 4,000 head of cattle at a time. And this is back in the 60s.
Wow.
And when Dad had to go buy cattle, he would leave me to tell the hired men what to do. And I was like 10, 11, 12 years old.
So you were already the boss at that time.
I was already bossing people.
I love that. I love that.
So he asked a question around the whole town. And in fact, my daughter sent another girl that was in the class at that time, dug it out. She found it, but she was cleaning out a box, and she said there was the questions that Mr. Rodriguez asked all the kids, and mine was the only one that said, I just want to work hard and hopefully have my own business and make a lot of money.
Oh my goodness. Well, you've been pretty consistent with that. And so you have done a construction company, and you've obviously, started that from the ground up. Obviously, we're curious to hear how you got your start and what possessed you to get your start. But fun facts about Steve is that he's also, driven race cars. And then, it turns out he wanted to go into farming. And so now he's been in the farming community, right, all your life, but it's something that you've kind of come back to. Did you ever think being a business owner meant that you would do a couple of different jobs, or were you not sure what that looked like for you? I
always had another. I've tried a lot of different things.
Okay.
But the sewer and water business that I do is real seasonal and everything else. So we tried a pizza parlor once.
No way.
And that didn't go too well. But
okay.
I also tried helping one of my friends out, but I've done a lot of other things. And I got involved in a stone quarry, and I had some partners on it, and then we just had it for about 4 or 5 years, and then we sold it off. And then I turned around and invested that money in building the drag strip in Joliet, Illinois, which was a real accomplishment. And I was already drag racing at that time. So that for the next, from 1998 till like 2007 or 8 or 9, I put a lot of time and effort into that to get it going and make it work. And then we got bought out by NASCAR. So
did you ever ask anyone permission to go out on your own and be a business owner?
No.
Did you ever think you had to, or were you just like, I'm so focused on this, this is what I'm doing?
When I first started, when I was 21, I had nothing to lose. I mean, I had $300 in the bank. I was collecting unemployment. I had a new pickup truck that I didn't, and I rented a house that I had no business having this new pickup truck and a 2-year-old son. So I just another gentleman, we're working for the same company. He was disgruntled too. So we went off on our own. We were two separate companies, but we worked together. He started digging the basements for houses, and then I put the sewer and water in and hauled the stone and did all that. And in a short period of time, I left after 2 years, I left him, or we left, it was mutual. And then I just pretty much started on my own.
So you had 2 years of background in that specific water and sewer line before you started? How many years of experience did you have before you were like, I'm ready to go out on my own?
The day I got out of high school, the first day out of high school, I went to work for a sewer and water contract.
Okay.
And I worked for him and another one from 1973 to 77. So
how old does that make you, Steve? You don't have to answer that question.
What?
How old you are now?
Now?
Yeah.
I'm 68 now. So
you've seen a couple of years.
You know, I'm still doing it, and we're still doing it. We're not as big as we used to be after the recession of 2009 through 12. I sold off like half the stuff, and we backed it off. I went at that time I went 2 or 3 years without a paycheck even. So
wow.
But now it's going good, real good now. And my brother pretty much manages it, and my brother or son-in-law, he does those two people and my estimators and stuff, they've all been with me for a long time, and they do okay without me there every day on a day-to-day basis now. So
that's awesome.
So I got time to go farming. So
okay. So tell our listeners, so you've been out on your own and you started, working. So since you were 18, so say you had 4 years of experience before you went out on your own and decided to take a chance to have your own business. And so you've done a couple of things, just learned that you had a pizza parlor at one time. That's wild. We need to talk more about that. And so, tell me about a time where you failed and then what you learned from that. I preface this with, I feel like a lot of business owners don't talk enough about their mistakes. And so mistakes, and when you fail, it can feel really awful. But I feel like that's typically the time where I've learned the most. So is there a time where you're like, I really learned that lesson the hard way and I won't do that again?
I would say in the construction business, we've had some bad jobs, but never enough where it financially hurt me. So later on, not too long ago, I decided to get in a business that I shouldn't have got into. I kind of got talked into it, and that one hurt. And it was something, quite frankly, it was a company making cigarettes. And I have never smoked my whole life. My dad died of cancer because of smoking. And I went into this business, or went into this investment, and we got taken for a ride, and it was substantial money. That one kind of hurt. So you're not a fan of smoking, right? Nope. Hate it.
So what made you be like, maybe this is a good idea?
Because everybody talked me into, you're going to make so much money. It didn't really matter. It was just like, you can do it.
You can have a good turnaround on this investment.
But it definitely went sour. We lost everything, every dollar I put into it. It was a lot.
Yeah, we probably don't want to know what that was like. So what did you learn from that experience?
I don't want any more partners in anything. Everything I do now, I do on my own.
So you got some trust things going on. Okay, fair enough.
And the other three, when we had a racetrack, we had a lot of problems with the partners. It just was hard, so.
Did you feel like maybe things weren't like communicated well, or maybe the expectations of everybody were different, or maybe what they wanted out of it wasn't well?
Well, everybody wants to make money, and the drag strip when we first started it did good the first year, and then it just went downhill. We overbuilt it.
Okay.
So we had too much loan against it and everything else. And then one of the owners that kind of took charge, really, he shouldn't have been. Well, we ended up getting rid of him and moved another guy in his spot. But I was the only one with all the construction knowledge and the racing knowledge that was in the whole picture of it. So, but it seemed like if I made a suggestion, it didn't go very far. So I just kind of let everybody well, finally when NASCAR offered to buy us out, and then we built a big oval track with it. The nice part about both of those is they were huge sewer and water jobs, and I got to do it all.
That's awesome.
So that was that year. What, that was 1998 through 2000. I spent every day of my life over there, and then my brother took care of all the other jobs because we had a lot of other stuff going on too.
So you had to manage your time. Tell our listeners and tell me briefly about this pizza parlor that you had. Where was the pizza parlor?
It was in Manuka.
Okay.
When was that? It was in the 90s. And my friend Mike Hammerstein talked me and Mel into it. Well, it was a good concept, and Mike was a good cook and everything else, but he'd already lost his concrete business twice. And so I went in there and dumped a lot of money into it. The next thing you know, Mel says, I can't do this, I want out. So I had to buy him out, bought him out. And then the next thing you know, Mike, who was running the whole place, doing everything else, says, I don't want to do this anymore. So I threw it all back in our lap. And
wow,
I spent $250,000 doing the build out and buying all the ovens and everything else. And I had it for 2 or 3 years, I guess, and sold the whole thing off for $90,000. And was happy just to
be done,
because I am not a retail person. I'm not a people person that can sit there and walk up to each one of the tables and say, well, I hope your meal is good, and if there's anything else we can do for you. I'm just not built that way. So, but we sold it to a guy that had a pizza place in Manhattan, and he just sold it about 2 or 3 years ago to one of the ladies there that had worked there, I think, since we owned it.
Wow.
For 20, 30 years. And it is still a very popular little spot, still in the same rented area. And
that's awesome. So it lived on.
It lived on.
Sans you. All right. So you picked maybe that the customer service piece is not your gig, and kind of going the venture way and being on your own might have been a better road for you to follow.
Right.
Okay. So let's pivot. So you've talked about, being a business owner, what made you kind of start a business in the first place. You've done a whole gamut of things, and you've, done the race car driving. You've never asked anyone for permission to do these things. And so I think when we're building our careers, right, listeners, I think we're talking about like how we have to have one job and stick with it, right? I think when you go to medical school, you're like, I'm going to be a doctor for my whole life, but nobody tells you that you can take a different path. You can pivot if you want to pivot. And it sounds like you've asked nobody to kind of do those things, and you've had that confidence in you all along. So now you're pursuing this farming piece, and you've, still do a little bit of construction, but it sounds like you stay out of it. How did you manage your day, and did it have anything to do with your red book? And tell us what your red book is.
Well, my red book is just basically a daily diary of what I do every day. And
why do you have it?
Because there's times when I want to go back to it and I can't remember. I have a short, hope it's not dementia or anything, but I forget, so I write it in, just it's just work related, or other stuff too. I put where we went or something, just real simple. I've done it for years. The first year in business, in 1977, I filled out this, it was a little bitty black book, and I'm pretty sure I still have it. And I looked at it that first year I was in business. I took the whole year, I never took a day off. Even Christmas, I went and worked in the morning. I went in the shop and fixed something or did something, just getting started. So
there was no such thing as work-life balance then,
no.
but you had your planner to go back to. Do you use your planner now to kind of help you like set up your day, or do you think about like how you're going to set up your day when you get started?
No, I pretty have to wake up in the middle of the night. It depends on what time, and start thinking about what I'm going to do the day, and hopefully I can go back to sleep. But sometimes you might as well just get up and go.
All right. So an entrepreneur's mind, right? A business owner's mind is always running. I think we're always thinking about the next idea, the next thing that we've got going on. And so let's talk a little bit. We've talked about kind of setting up your day and what that looks like for you. Tell me about employees and kind of how, like you've hired people over the years, you've managed people over the years. Tell me about how you are able to essentially not micromanage, right? Like we've kind of talked about this micromanagement piece of it. And how do you trust your brother to do the day-to-day? And what was it about him that you were like, go?
Well, he's 12 years younger than me.
Okay.
So he was 14 years old when he first came to work for me. He was a family member, so you're supposed to be 18. So that didn't matter. And I mean, he just did odds and ends and little stuff like that. And then he went to college just for business, just junior college he went to, and he never quit. I mean, he's been with me pretty much. I mean, he worked for a couple other guys in the summer when he was still in high school.
Now, when you raced, were you in touch with him when you were out racing, or
Yes, I was way more involved then. So I mean, I was on the phone with him and everything else. And we would leave on a Wednesday and drive. We went all the way to California, all the way to in Edmonton, Canada, Florida, Maine. We drove a long ways, but my truck had a sleeper in it, and we had two other guys that worked for me on the race car, and we all drove. So the truck would never stop, and we would get there, and as soon as the race was over with, if I got knocked out early or something, we were on our way home. And normally I was back to work on Monday.
Wow.
Every day.
So you've worked so hard your whole life, right? You've like done the grind and you've loved working. So what would you tell a business owner that wants to go out on their own? What would you tell someone who's in a job and you're like, they've got that itch to be a business owner? What kind of maybe warnings would you give them, and what kind of encouragement might you give somebody?
Well, the warnings wise is you and hopefully you don't do it, but you might neglect your family. And I did. There's no doubt about it. I did.
So what would you tell them? Close the laptop sometimes?
Yeah, or
right.
pick a day off where you do something with the family or something like that. And I never went to a baseball game or anything hardly in my early days, so to watch my son play or whatever. So
okay. So the warnings, pick a day, make sure you're taking it off, because the brain, I don't think it ever stops.
Right.
You're still thinking
work. You're still going to be thinking it, but at least you're making other people happy.
And you're filling up their cup. You're filling up your own cup, because you're getting that little bit of balance. I think balance isn't the right word, but what would you tell someone to encourage them in being a business owner in times like these now, where, inflation's crazy and, people are, trying to do their best to make ends meet. They're trying to do their best to have some sort of life and some sort of time where they can spend time with family and pursue the things that they love. How would you encourage them?
You're absolutely right on all that. It is tough right now. I mean, but when I started, like I said, when I started in business, I didn't care. I had nothing to lose. So because 1977, in 1979, we went into a hell of a recession.
So
And
2 years after you
2
started.
years after I started, and I was already, I had my goals set. I'd already meeting my goals for like going in business, and it was tough. But luckily, I was so small, I could undercut the big guys, and I was doing big work already,
Mm-hmm.
and so I made through it. I would bid the jobs. I would get up at 3 a.m. and bid a job, and then give it to someone to take to go give it to a village or whatever we were bidding at. And then I would go work, and I would sit on a machine and then run everybody from that. I'm not to say that that's not the right way to do my business. Now there's so much paper, it's so much different way back then.
Yeah,
now,
that it is now.
Now that the paperwork and stuff and everything, you have to now, I went from no people in the office to having 4 now. So and they are busy as can be, but a lot of it's just stuff that we never had to do before.
Wow. Do you think it's harder to start a business now?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. And the investment, it's my first brand new backhoe was like 22,000. That exact same machine right now is 150,000.
Do you think there is an increase? Like, when they say like the next generations, they can't afford houses, they can't afford this and that. Like, do you think prices have increased in general, making it harder for the normal person to get a house or to go on their own and be like, all right, I'm going to go buy a brand new backhoe right now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I think especially in the housing, we're sitting in a brand new house doing this right now, and this house would have cost me half of what it cost if we would have built it 3 years ago.
It's almost sickening.
So that's tough. Plus, when my first house was 12% interest on which, so when you hear 7% or whatever interest, 6% or whatever a house mortgage is right now, that doesn't sound too bad to me. But because back then that was bad, and that was in the early 80s also. So
yeah. Well, listeners, I don't know if you're getting a ton of encouragement from this inflation piece of it.
You gotta want to work.
Yeah.
If you got it in your head that you want to do a business, no matter what, you gotta give it a try.
Yeah, I would almost tell people, I think the route I took is to start really small, and because I had a lot to risk, and so I didn't know what I wanted to do or what I wanted to pursue, and so I would say don't quit your day job, right? I think sometimes when people are like, quit, I love that, but also at the same time, I think some people can't. I think if that's the only job that you've got to try something small. Do you believe in the side hustle? Do you believe in working a job and then doing something else?
Well, that depends on what business you're into.
True.
I mean, like my business, you had to have a whole bunch of equipment. And if you're making payments on it or something, you're not going to make the payments on it just working for someone else and then on weekends go work with it. Now, I mean, I've seen a lot of guys do it, and some of them have made it, and most of them don't.
Yeah.
But I think that's the same thing with any business.
Yeah.
Most of them don't make it.
Well,
so, but I think
we go back to this want to work piece.
Yes, you just gotta really have to want it.
Yeah. You think you might have to be a self-starter?
Yes, pretty much. I think so.
Okay.
I think so. I mean, I had nothing to lose. So the 2 guys that I worked for those 3 years before I went on my own, when I sat and watched them and I said, if they can make money, I know I can.
Yeah.
I know I can, because I learned that they were both like shysters. And I knew that by doing it right and treating people right, you can go places.
Let's end this on a really good note. Okay, let's end this on a good note. So we're talking about treating people right and employing the right people and probably putting the right people in the right position, right? My job is recruiting. And so I'm always thinking about the business. I'm thinking about the job seeker and how I put them in the right position. So you had a really long-standing employee, and he was with you for a very, very long time. And so listeners will fill you in. So one of his very long time employees was my cousin Jason. And I think you employed him, since he was 18? Yeah. He's no longer with us. He's up in heaven now. But Steve, how long was he with you?
He was 43 when he passed away. So
1843, whatever the math is there. What, over 20 years?
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh,
So was it about him that you were like, you're going to be with me for this ride and doing all of the work with you when it came to the construction piece, when it came to the racing piece? What was it about him that you were like, you're my right-hand man? What did that look like for you guys?
well, when he started, I hired him just for the racing
Okay.
from day one. And then in the winter time when we weren't racing, then he came in the construction shop and we had him do, he was very, very mechanical.
Yeah.
And so when I quit racing after 20 years, I approached him and I said, there's race teams that want you because you are good. And he says, no, I just want to stay with you. So I got him in a operators union as a mechanic, and spent the rest of his days doing that.
That's awesome.
So, but I also had another employee that went to work for me. I was in business for 2 months, and I had a cave in while I was putting pipe in the ground, putting a sewer and water service into a house, and I should have died. Anyway, I went right over to I went to high school with him, and we had talked, and he didn't like where he was working. He came to work for me, and he just retired 2 years ago.
Wow.
From age 21 till, well, he's my age. He's the exact same age as me. So he had 45 years with me or something. Wow. Most of my guys, they're all getting old. And that's another issue. When you have employees, you got to find some new blood. And it's harder now in the construction trade to find new blood than young people that want to do this. They're used to playing in their basement on games. And it's a rough go.
Yeah, well, I don't know if there's enough exposure either to like what that day to day is like. But let's go back to Jason, your other guy. Why did you hire them for so long? Why did you keep them employed with you for so long? Was it Jason and your friend? Was it their work ethic? Was it their,
Yeah, I mean they did their job. Jason, he was a lot of fun.
Oh, I know. Yeah, the number one fun seeker.
Right. The other guy I was just talking about, he's the most miserable son of a gun ever God put on earth. But he took care of he was a truck driver. He was good at what he did.
Did he have a high pride of ownership for working with you?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But he was a complainer. So he was a handful.
He was a handful. A couple handfuls. You're talking to one. So listeners, when you're working with someone long, right? I think it's rare when you work with a company and you stay with a company for a really long time. But I think there's so much value in building those relationships with those people, and you know what to expect, and how they're going to handle things. And so, finding maybe a couple, 2, 3, 4 people in your corner can help you be successful if you go out on your own. I don't think you're going to make every right hire, right? I'm sure you haven't made every right hire.
No, we've gone through a lot of people over the years.
And I think, it's not a fit for everyone, but there's definitely something to be said about getting more exposure out there about your trade and what you all do, because I don't know the first thing about it, and I didn't know the first thing about farming until you exposed me to it. So, all right, listeners. Well, you're hearing it first from a business owner who has kind of run the gamut, done a couple of different jobs. And I think what we're learning more and more on this podcast is that a lot of people are taking different career pivots. And I think that's just this journey called life. And so I want to encourage you on this life, that life is better with you in it. We're so encouraged to have you with us and learning more and getting exposure to different people, different types of, work and different types of things that you can do with your life. So you're in the driver's seat, right?
Yep.
I think you're in the driver's seat. Yeah. So thanks for being with us today, Steve.
Loved it. Thank you.
All right, listeners, have a wonderful, wonderful day.